Welcome, everyone, to the Ready for the Draft podcast. I am your host, Gregg Schutze. This is episode 15 of the 2023 podcast series, where we take a look at the draft-eligible prospects and get you ready for the NFL draft. In the last podcast, we actually did a preview for the bowl season, so we're a little bit behind the eight ball. I know bowl season ended on January 9th, crowning Georgia as the college football champions. Really much deserved. They were the best college football team in all of America for the majority of the 2022 college football season. And really what we need to do is get a quick recap of the bowl season, get a half hour or so talking about who really stood out in the bowl that's helped themselves with their draft process. You know, a lot of guys sat out the bowl season, so there'll be a lot of conversation there. We'll need to get into talking about the underclassmen and what that does for this draft class, and then really start jumping into the all-star games, take a look at my first mock draft, and then get ready for, really that Senior Bowl is going to be the biggest matchup where you're taking a look at a lot of these guys that are going to be factors in the first couple of days of the draft and beyond. And then we'll get into the combine and really into the pre-draft process, taking a look at free agency and how that might impact things as well. So that's kind of a look ahead as to what you can expect. But when we really look at the bowl season, we're going to go position by position, really take a look at some of the players that helped their draft stock. And I'll tell you, the first and foremost, we look at the quarterback position. Bryce Young did it again. You know, what I thought was impressive for both him and Will Anderson, these are guys that could potentially be two of the top three picks in this year's draft, and yet they still wanted to come out and play the bowl game. They wanted one more game with their teammates. And Bryce Young, look, he did it all. You know, again, over 300 yards passing, 5 touchdown passes. This was a guy who just the calm under pressure, just ice water in his veins, coolly just moving in the pocket, being able to manipulate it. Keep those eyes down the field, find the open receivers, throws those receivers open, and just does a great job with the eye discipline, really moving defenders whenever he needed to. Bryce Young, to me, really solidified himself as the number one quarterback in this year's draft. When you look at C.J. Stroud, I think probably had the best performance of the season there in the Peach Bowl against Georgia. Now, obviously, Georgia came out with the victory, but it wasn't due to a lack of effort on the part of C.J. Stroud. You know, this was a guy, again, running that offense to perfection, a guy that does a great job with a lot of those crossing routes, throwing his receivers open, allowing them to make a play after the catch. You love his ability to survey the field, go through his progressions, the touch passes, really being able to layer those throws, find the open man, and be able to drop that ball in. Really just that pinpoint accuracy is really impressive to watch coming out of C.J. Stroud. I know one of the biggest polarizing things with him is that arm strength or lack thereof. You know, this is a guy that can't really push the ball down the field, but I'll tell you what, Joe Burrow is one of the best quarterbacks in being able to manipulate the defense, use those eyes to get the defense to go where he needs them to then hit his open receiver, make a lot of those touch throws, being able to fit the ball in when he needs to. And a lot of people attack Joe Burrow for not having an elite arm. But yet, this is a guy who has a chance to take his team, his Cincinnati Bengals, to a second Super Bowl. So C.J. Stroud in this game, 23 of 34, 348 yards and 4 touchdowns. Also showed that he can take off and run just a little bit, manipulated the pocket a little, tucked it and ran when he needed to. I thought it was a big day for C.J. Stroud overall there on December 31st. And look, C.J. Stroud, he's going to be the second or third quarterback taken. You've got Will Levis that's sitting right in there. Where's he going to go? He sat out the bowl game. I think Will Levis, because of the traits, may be a little bit a team like Indianapolis may be enamored with him being able to bring Will Levis in, maybe play behind a veteran quarterback. We could definitely see that happen. Now, Georgia's Stetson Bennett, we know he was a Heisman Trophy finalist, and this is a guy that, look, he threw for just under 400 yards with 3 touchdowns and a pick against Ohio State, really willed that team to victory. That team looked like they were done against Ohio State, really able to lead them in the second half, ultimately getting the win over the Buckeyes. And look, Georgia really just outclassed TCU in the championship. 304 yards on 18 to 25 passing, 4 touchdowns. Stetson Bennett isn't the biggest guy. He's only 5'11", but what he did show was an elite understanding of that offense, always knowing where to go with the football. He's never going to be a guy that's going to win the game for you, I think, at the next level. What you do have is a guy who is going to get himself drafted. I think he's absolutely going to be a day 3 pick. His arm strength, he can, especially on the short to intermediate throws, drive the football, something that C.J. Stroud, a lot of people give him a hard time about. But, throwing the football down the field with that accuracy, that's one of the things that is going to be a concern at times. I think Stetson Bennett is a guy that's going to step in and he may be a career backup. You look at a guy like Taylor Heineke and what Heineke has been able to do. Teams are going to be looking for a guy that can fit that mold, and I think that Stetson Bennett could absolutely do that. Jake Haener was another guy for Fresno State. Had a big bowl game, leading the Bulldogs to victory. And look, Jake Haener, you have to love what this guy does out there on the football field for the Bulldogs. And you look at, again, Taylor Heineke. This is another guy that fits that mold. He's an older quarterback. He's going to be 25 years of age, so I know that that's going to come into play a little bit. But Jake Haener, obviously, Fresno State getting that big win in the bowl game. They went out there and just absolutely put on a show against Washington State, 29-6. Haener on the day, that stat line for him, he was 24-36, 280 yards, 2 touchdowns on the day. Really set himself apart there, and a guy that I think is going to end up being a day 3 pick overall. Max Duggan, look, you're going to focus on the national title game, and you're going to give him a hard time because, look, just 152 yards, couple of interceptions, but look, that team was just outclassed. He was doing everything that he could to try to make a play, but those tackles were just outclassed. They're able to put pressure with minimal rushers, and really when they set the house, he was in trouble. But Max Duggan, showing again with the athleticism, his ability to make plays outside the pocket. I think Max Duggan will be a day 3 pick. He's not going to be in that second round range that Andy Dalton was when he was coming out of TCU, but definitely a guy that I think is going to earn his way onto a roster, possibly be a backup, potentially even a spot starter when it's all said and done. Houston's Clayton Tune, just another quarterback, just of note real quick. I thought Clayton Tune had a decent game, bringing that team back to victory, 23-16. 229 yards through the air, 3 touchdowns, was also the team's leading carrier on the ground, had a 33-yard run, total of 55 yards on the day. I thought Clayton Tune definitely helped himself in terms of that draft stock as a day 3 candidate. And I think the fact that Bo Nix, Michael Penix Jr. are coming back definitely bodes well for Tune and in that potential to get drafted. Looking at the running back position, obviously Frank Gore Jr. was the highlight of bowl season, breaking Cameron Peoples' rushing record for bowl games. And look, that kid was just absolutely dominant. He's not going to be draft eligible. He's only a sophomore, but he really willed Southern Miss to that victory over Rice with 329 yards and 2 touchdowns on the day. But when you look at that running back position, Jahmyr Gibbs, yet again, showcasing his ability to catch the football out of the backfield, the quickness between the tackles, the footwork. Jahmyr Gibbs, to me, number 2 running back, and I see him really as an early day 2 pick. I'm looking at Carolina sitting there in round number 2. I think that'd be a nice pickup for them. Kenny McIntosh, another guy, look, had 5 catches for 56 yards and a touchdown to go along with 70 yards on just 5 touches there on the ground for Georgia over Ohio State. And he follows that up against TCU with another stellar performance, 8 carries for another, I believe, 50 yards. But really with Kenny McIntosh, this is a guy that could do it all. Between the tackles, showed his ability to get to the edge and show speed outside the tackles as well. And then, the ability to catch the football out of the backfield. This is a guy who I think could be a 3-down back. I'm looking at the Eagles at the end of the second round, especially if Miles Sanders doesn't come back. I think this is a guy that could, if they don't decide to take Bijan Robinson in round number 1, I think they can wait and take Kenny McIntosh in round number 2. The best running back that nobody's really talking about is Tyjae Spears. And look, Tyjae Spears, this was a guy who single-handedly beat the Trojans in the Cotton Bowl Classic. 205 yards on the ground, 4 touchdowns. This was a guy who showed that next level speed, being able to take the ball and take off for a 62-yard run. Look, this guy averaged 12.1 yards per reception in that game. Also had a 14-yard reception, so he showed his ability to catch the football out of the backfield. You love the lateral agility. You love the feet in the hole as well. This is a dynamic running back. He's got that smaller frame, so he's not a guy that could really be that workhorse for you, but definitely a guy that's going to come in and make some plays for you. I thought he definitely earned himself some money in the bowl game. And if he's the running back that nobody's really talking about, then the number 2 running back on that list should be East Carolina's Keaton Mitchell. Look, only a redshirt sophomore. He's a smaller back as well, but this was a guy who was dynamic against Coastal Carolina, really doing this all season long. 22 carries, 127 yards, and a touchdown on the day. A smaller back, so that's really 5'9", just 184 pounds. Back-to-back seasons with over 1,100 yards on the ground, had 1,452 yards this past season, 7.2 yards per carry. Very explosive once he gets outside the tackles, stronger runner between the tackles than you would expect from a guy his size. Look, he did it all there against Coastal Carolina. He's another guy that I think is going to continue to see his draft stock rise. And then how about Deuce Vaughn and what he was able to do there against Alabama? Obviously Kansas State really ran into the buzzsaw that is the Alabama Crimson Tide. I think they were there to really make a statement and show everyone why they're still one of the elite teams in all of college football. Everyone talking about Georgia possibly passing Nick Saban. They made sure to show that wasn't the case. But Deuce Vaughn, 22 carries, 133 yards, busted off an 88-yard touchdown. And this is the guy, look, he hides behind the defense and that offensive line, and then is able to burst to the hole. Very patient to allow those blockers to set up their blocks. Once that hole opens up, then man, he's got that afterburner to really put it into gear and run away from people. Mohamed Ibrahim, I thought, was another guy that definitely helped his draft stock. A guy that could have said, you know what, I don't need to play in the bowl game. We've seen a lot of other guys in a similar situation decide that they weren't going to play, but Mohamed Ibrahim, you have to absolutely respect this guy. This was a dude that was coming off of a knee injury, but yet another 1,000-yard season, showcased that power. Only 71 yards on the ground, but definitely much respect for deciding to play in the bowl game and then being able to show what he could do on the ground. He's a guy, to me, he'll be a day 3 pick, but that grinder, don't count him out when it's all said and done at the next level. Wide receivers, Quentin Johnston, look, Georgia took him out of the game, but he had a big impact against Michigan. One of the big reasons why the Horned Frogs were able to go ahead and get it done. 6 catches, 163 yards, and a 76-yard touchdown to his credit. And when you look at Quentin Johnston, what he did there was attack the middle of the field, uses that big size to make some plays, but that 76-yard touchdown, it was on a 3rd down in the 4th quarter, runs a shallow cross across the field, ball thrown out in front, extends his hands away from his body to make that catch, cuts up the field, then really switches gears, breaks a tackle, runs away from DJ Turner, and then has the speed to go the distance. This is a guy who potentially has that legit 4.4 speed at 6'4", 201 pounds. He's a guy that is going to be talked about as a potential number 1 wide receiver in this year's draft class. Marvin Mims had just 2 catches for 77 yards, but again, just being able to showcase his ability to be an explosive playmaker for Oklahoma. And look, he just what I loved was his ability to the route running was really what was impressive, because you saw him make a jab to the outside, back to the inside, then gets that outside release again, gets even with the corner, accelerates by him, runs by him. Now Dylan Gabriel's ball was it hung up, and the DB was able to make a play on the football, but still just showing that ability to the route running on that play, probably one of his best routes, and he didn't even end up getting the ball. But he was down the sideline on a 3rd and 15, a go route, and was able to track the football. The ball had a ton of air under it, was able to track it, caught the football over his shoulder, got a foot down before being forced out for a 46-yard gain into the red zone. So I thought Marvin Mims showcased some of that explosiveness. How about Tank Dell catching the game-winning pass there from Clayton Tune to win the game? Everyone forgets about Tank Dell. I think the Blitnikoff Award, a lot of people thought that Tank Dell should have been a finalist, but this was a guy, I thought in the bowl game just showcased again. Anybody that was worried about him or forgot about him, he was able to showcase what he can do. A.T. Perry's an interesting guy, 6'5", 206 out of Wake Forest, against Missouri in the Gasparilla Bowl. Really a fun matchup against Chris Abrams-Drain there for Missouri. Just really showed this smoothness to his route running. Very easy mover, attacked the football with his hands, did a really good job adjusting to back shoulder throws. You saw the catch radius, just snatching the football out of the air. I think A.T. Perry really solidified himself as a day 2 pick. And then looking at a few of the other guys, how about Trey Shropshire, a guy that to me I think has really worked his way into potentially being a late day 3 pick. This was a guy who just absolutely, he got vertical, had 4 receptions for 120 yards and a touchdown in the first half, 26 yards per reception. Last year, led the FBS. This is a guy that just continues to get vertical, and that speed kills at the next level. To me, I think Shropshire has really solidified himself as a draftable prospect. I hope he gets an invite to the combine so we can see just how fast he runs. 6 catches, 183 yards, and a touchdown. That's 30.5 yards per reception. He had a long of 49 yards, so this was a dude that just continued to make plays down the football field, stretching the defense against Miami of Ohio in the Bahamas Bowl. So he's really was a guy that I was impressed with. Elijah Cooks there for San Jose State. He transferred from Nevada, and Elijah Cooks using that big body of his to make plays. That was one of the things that I thought stood out. Obviously, San Jose State wound up losing the ball game, but this was a kid who just decent burst for his size, able to go up and high point the football, showcasing some really strong hands at the point of attack as well. At the tight end position, I think Sam Laporta may have had the best overall performance of the tight ends that played in their bowl game. When you look at Sam Laporta, he was taking on Kentucky in the Music City Bowl. Now, he tore his meniscus on November 17th and has still been playing with that. Excellent route runner, a sure-handed wide receiver. There was a play where he makes a quick throw over the middle, moves well laterally to bounce it outside, broke 6 tackles, including a spin move to get free, then gets downfield, a stiff arm as well. And look, he's an Iowa tight end, so this is a guy that is going to be able to block. Really good inline blocker as well. Lined up a Wildcat quarterback, had a couple of carries for the Hawkeyes as well. To me, I think Sam Laporta is probably your number 6 tight end. I think there's a group of 5 that are going to sit there in that first and second round. I think Sam Laporta will probably be the first tight end taken in round number 3. Cameron Latu was another tight end, obviously, that impressed in the bowl games. Latu, Bama against K-State, and Latu ends up catching a touchdown pass in that game. But what I like about Cameron Latu, look, this guy converted from the defensive side of the football, continuing to grow at the position, not just a pass catcher, but a guy that can also show up as a tremendous blocker as well, right? That was one of the things that you saw in this game was, yes, he had, I think it was 54 yards through the air to go along with the touchdown, but you also saw him making blocks both as an inline tight end and also out on the outside. So Cameron Latu, to me, is going to probably be in that 3rd round range. I thought Braden Willis also helped himself there at Oklahoma. What you love about Braden Willis is this is a guy that, lines up everywhere for him, including Wildcat. Really, he's 6'4", 235, probably going to be that H-back type, but, runs great routes, excellent hands, really a good blocker as well, gives you that versatility there on the offensive side of the football. And then Mason Fairchild, if you're looking for a sleeper, Mason Fairchild for Kansas always seems to be that weapon down the seam, has tremendous hands for a guy his size, and I think he's a pretty good blocker as well. I think Mason Fairchild has a chance to be a late day 3 pick and could be a guy that sticks at an NFL roster. I think if you look at the offensive line and you talk about Georgia and Ohio State, that Peach Bowl, that was a game that you got to see Paris Johnson and Broderick Jones, DeJuan Jones, and see what they did. And really, obviously, to me, I don't think they disappointed. I thought that they were all guys that really excited me, getting me really focused to see what lies ahead. When you look at Paris Johnson, really got a good kick slide against Jalen Carter, kept his feet moving, kept that defensive tackle away from the quarterback. We know just how good Jalen Carter can be. Kept those hands inside, did a great job there, really keeping him. The biggest thing that I think with Paris Johnson, you see the technique. The technique is great, but a lot of times that change of direction. He got beaten by Jalen Carter a couple of times because of that lack of that change of direction at times. Against Michael Williams, the freshman, started with this kick slide, and that inside leg kind of dropped to open up to the inside as the defensive end, as Williams was pushing him back. Attacks that inner half, able to attack his hands, and as he's trying to take that inside move, Paris was able to then reset his hands under that pad level, get under that armpit, and really stifle any further rush. But that's the thing with Paris Johnson, is he's that the technique every once in a while will get a little sloppy. He's got to watch the angles that he's taking. But I think Paris Johnson overall is a guy that's going to be that second or third offensive tackle that's going to be taken in the draft. When you look at Broderick Jones, obviously he had both TCU and Ohio State to prepare for. Very light on his feet, able to get out. He took on a safety there at Ohio State on the edge. Very easy to pick him up. One of the things was, he was susceptible to the inside move against Zach Harris, and he was easily beating him to the inside. What I loved, though, was his ability to kick slide, get out, meet JT Tuimoloau, got his hands on him, the grip strength, the hands underneath, able to take him up the field and get him away from Stetson Bennett. Needs to watch the pad level at times. I thought there was a play there against JT Tuimoloau where he beats him to the edge, but that high pad level, JT was able to get inside with a spin move, didn't give up on the play, got Stetson Bennett in the pocket, ended up taking him down for a sack with Steel Chambers. But one of the things that I thought was so impressive was seeing Broderick Jones get out and pull out in front of Kenny McIntosh, getting blocks on the linebacker, Tommy Eichenberg. He's getting a block on the safety. That was something that I thought was really impressive. And later on, that short memory as that offensive tackle, moving laterally on his kick slide. JT tries to do a spin move to the outside, able to maintain that leverage with the kick slide, pick him up, get those hands on him. The biggest thing is he's got to watch the feet. He's got to keep those feet moving. JT didn't give up on the play and ends up getting to the quarterback and makes a hit on him as he's trying to throw. So Broderick, the biggest thing is once he's moving laterally in one direction, he's fine, especially if they're going to try to take a secondary move to continue to attack in that direction. Change of direction can be a little slow at times. Pad level a little bit as well, but overall Broderick Jones is just the easy mover, the easiness with the way that he moves. I think he's going to end up being the number 3 offensive tackle in this year's draft when it's all said and done. And then with DeJuan Jones, this dude is just a mammoth dude. He's 6'8", 359. Shot his hands in against Jalen Carter, locks out, but ends up getting overextended, too far over his toes. Jalen Carter is able to beat him. One of the things that I loved was watching him block down on Warren Brinson. Really brought him all the way down the line. Excellent hand placement, active feet. Completely collapses down on Warren Brinson on another play that really just caved in that whole right side. This guy's a mammoth dude. He's strictly a right tackle, which is why I think he'll end up being a second rounder. But team's going to get a guy that I think is going to start in the league for a long time when it's all said and done. When you look at the guard position, Steve Avila, I think, will get beaten up at times because he's a guy that looks to manhandle you with the physicality, with the strength more than anything else. There's some question marks about his lateral quickness. But I'll tell you what, I watched him with one rep, one-on-one against Jalen Carter. Uses his hands to keep distance from Carter. He tried to work inside, but that hand placement on that right shoulder pad as he was working up the field was able to square Carter up, allow Duggan to get rid of the football. There's another play where Carter tried to attack out the outside. Does a good job showing the lateral quickness to the left. Carter works back to the inside, was able to change direction to keep him from getting any penetration. When he kept his feet under him, I thought Steve Avila looked really good against Georgia in that national title game. He can get beat with speed. I think that's one of the biggest things. But if you allow him to utilize that strength to his advantage, really be able to use that power in his hands, be able to really hold the point of attack. That was one of the things that I really saw. You saw him drop his anchor against Marvin Jones Jr. There against Georgia, and was able to sustain his block for over 3 seconds in pass protection. So he's a guy to me that I think he's just a lot of fun to watch. And because of that physicality, he'll probably end up being either a late day 2 or a day 3 pick, but really, again, a lot of fun to watch. I thought that he actually really helped himself in that game, especially with those reps there against Jalen Carter. Braden Daniels, Utah taking on Penn State in the Rose Bowl. Very active hands in the run game. You saw him, the agility to slide to the second level to the safety. Very athletic as a lead blocker. Biggest thing is he overset against the defensive end, Adisa Isaac, leaning outside, crosses his face, gets into the backfield, able to hit Cam Rising as he was throwing. I think really that speed is what's going to hurt Braden Daniels, a guy that doesn't have tremendous length either. He's 6'4", 297, arms, not ideal for that left tackle position. I think he's going to be a guy that's going to kick inside to guard, but I think he'll be a solid day 3 pick when it's all said and done. When you look at that center position, I think Luke Whippler was the guy. Look, especially now that Cedric Van Pran has said that he's coming back to Georgia for another year, Luke Whippler has to be very excited. This is a guy I think can end up being a 2nd or 3rd round pick and be a starter in the league for a long time. Those Ohio State centers really show up well at the next level, very well coached, very athletic, climbing to the 2nd level, really a good rep against Jalen Carter, getting his hands underneath the defensive tackle. The arms did get a little bit beyond the armpit, nearly wrapped around the defensive tackle. Could have been called for a hold on the play because he might have taken him down, and with the hand placement got a little sloppy there, but you love the athleticism there from Luke Whippler, redshirt sophomore, 6'3", 300 pounds. Olusegun Oluwatimi, look, this guy really came in and helped solidify this offensive line of Michigan's, but man, TCU's freshman nose tackle, Demonic Williams, on a 1st and goal from the 1, really just blew him back. Poor exchange between the running back Mullings and J.J. McCarthy. Fumble recovered by TCU in the end zone. That was one of the things that I thought really stood out was his ability. He was just getting blown back off the ball time and time again. He's really got to work on that anchor more than anything else, but he's a very intelligent blocker, a guy that, look, he's a highly decorated center, but it's one of those things that you worry about. Is there some stiffness to his game? Is that why he's being blown off the ball as much as he was? Zach Harrison, I thought, at the defensive end position, transitioning to the defense. Zach Harrison was a guy for me that I thought really helped improve his draft stock once again. In that Georgia game, I already mentioned what he was able to do, but he read against the run as well. Read the end around to Lab McConkey, left tackle blocks down. He gets up the field in a hurry, drops the receiver for a 7-yard loss, uses his length to his advantage to get the edge as well. Broderick Jones beats him out of the stance, uses that length to get into the body of Jones because he was slow to get his hands on him, able to use that strength, bending around the edge, nearly able to get to Stetson Bennett. Ultimately, the left guard came in to give some additional time for him to throw. But Zach Harrison, 4 tackles, a half sack, 1.5 tackles for loss on the day. To me, I think Zach Harrison's going to he could sneak his way into the end of round number 1, especially if the Eagles decide to take a defensive end there with that 31st overall pick. I think he'll end up being an early day 2 pick, but a guy that I think there's a lot of upside. I was disappointed with the way that he played last year. This year, I'm definitely excited to see what he can do. I thought another guy that really helped himself was Dylan Horton out of TCU. Obviously, when he went up against Georgia, struggled with some of his reps there, but against Michigan, that's really where he was the standout. He was able to showcase, some of that athleticism, beat the right guard, Zach Zinter, with an inside move, looping around. The linebacker, Johnny Hodges, blitzed where Zinter vacated, forced McCarthy up. Horton ends up getting the sack on it. 3-man rush, able to chase down McCarthy backside, gets a strip from behind as he's taking him down. And this guy, look, athleticism for days. 4.5, 540, 38-inch vertical leap. Had, really a day against Michigan. Michigan was having a hard time really putting a block on this guy. Had 4 sacks on the day, 6 total tackles, that forced fumble, and a pass breakup. Dylan Horton, is an athlete. He'll probably end up being a 4th-round pick, but a guy that I think definitely showed up well. Other guys that I thought played well, Lucas Van Ness out of Iowa, KJ Henry there for Clemson. I thought when he went up against Darnell Wright, the offensive tackle there for Tennessee, I thought that KJ Henry struggled to get off the block. I think Darnell Wright, for me, is a guy that's going to end up being a 3rd-round pick. He's going to end up starting somewhere at that right tackle position. His teammate, Byron Young, I thought played phenomenally well there against Clemson, really getting in and wreaking havoc in the backfield there against Cade Klubnik. Obviously, we know that Tennessee ended up winning the bowl game. Byron Young, it's going to be interesting to see. Is he going to be a 3rd-round pick, 4th-round pick? He kind of fits somewhere in that range, but I thought he definitely had a nice game and had a couple of sacks on the day there as well. Felix Anadike Uzoma was able to show some power there at the point of attack for K-State against Bama. D'Anthony Jones for Houston, able to get into the backfield. Jordan Ferguson had some really nice reps for Middle Tennessee. And then Tavius Robinson for Ole Miss was able to get a sack for Mississippi on the day as well. If you look at the defensive tackles, obviously Jalen Carter was a guy that was a man among boys. You saw the athleticism, you saw the power, you saw the hands. You saw really a little bit of everything with this guy. There was a quick throw into the boundary, TCU to Quentin Johnson. Showed the quick hands to swipe, then chases into the boundary, line of scrimmage at the 20-yard line, in on the tackle for just 3 yards, able to chase him all the way to the sideline. Doesn't attack the chest of the offensive lineman. He's going to look to work the edges, but the hand swipes, the looping around to show that athleticism, getting to the quarterback, the burst, and really using that speed to power to drive his man back into the backfield. Doesn't stay blocked. That's one of the things I thought was so impressive. You see him explode off the ball, beats the double team, attacks the outside shoulder of the center, quick arm over to get inside, squares, works up the field, ends up working the quarterback into a sack. It's one of those things where he just keeps that low pad level off the ball. And man, he is just so difficult to block and to really keep him in front of you. And look, there's still some, the scary part is there's still more to his game. He had 4 quarterback hurries there against Ohio State, and then follows it up against TCU. Just had a couple of tackles, but that really doesn't tell you the story, because he was wreaking havoc on nearly every play against the Horned Frogs, unfortunately for them. Now, Brian Bresee is a guy, look, I think people are going to be all over the board with Brian Bresee. I think when healthy, this guy is one of the more explosive players at the defensive line, our defensive tackle specifically. What you see out of Brian Bresee is a guy who is very strong at the point of attack. You saw him extend his arms into Darnell Wright with great leverage, anchoring, lifting under him to hold the point of attack, beats Wright with his hands to the chest early, extends, gets off the block, able to get inside to pressure Joe Milton. This is a guy that was really giving Jonathan Carvin, the right guard, all he could handle. And was able to get into the backfield, flatten a little bit, get to the quarterback, his 9th sack of his career. One of the things that I did see was pad level did get a little bit too high. Darnell Wright had just basically had all kinds of jersey to attack, had his entire chest to attack, was able to just drive right into him, into his body, and drive him a good 8 yards down the field. So that's something, the stiffness in Brian Bresee is something that you worry about a little bit. Tuli Tuipulotu, they're out of USC. This is a guy that I think is a first-round pick when it's all said and done. I think I'm looking at Denver there at the end of round number 1. I think could potentially end up taking Tuli. One of the things is that running game. That's really the biggest thing that you worry about with him. Is that ability. He was frozen on his own read. Tajay Spears goes left, quarterback pulls it, takes off up the middle. That delayed reaction, and the quarterback Michael Pratt ran right by him for a 40-yard gain. But as a pass rusher, that's one of the things that I thought really stood out for me. Getting a push on the inside of the left tackle, nearly getting to Pratt in the pocket. Really attacks the edge, looks to try to bend around and get to the quarterback. But it's really just that ability to affect the run and being able to be consistent there. That's really the biggest thing that I'm looking for out of Tuli, and that's something that I didn't see enough of in that Tulane game. But I still think that pass rush ability there at the defensive tackle position is something that ultimately is going to get him drafted in the first round. Kobe Turner, another guy there for Wake Forest, and somebody who I thought showed some good explosiveness, a guy that was able to get to the quarterback a little bit there, 6'3", 300 pounds. The Richmond transfer, lined up at nose tackle for much of the game, uses his hands really well. You saw a slap and a swim, and able to get to the quarterback, flushing Brady Cook from the pocket. Just a guy that continued to battle, slap and rip, very active against the pass. He's a guy that I think is going to be a day 3 pick, but a guy that's really intriguing because of his ability to get after the quarterback. Gerard Clark, didn't really get to the quarterback a ton, didn't really make any plays effectively there for Coastal Carolina in terms of the stats, but you saw the quick burst, you saw his hands off the ball to get early penetration into the backfield, ripping underneath the center off the snap, really good short area burst to put some pressure on the quarterback as well. Ultimately, the Chanticleers going down to East Carolina in the Birmingham Bowl. But look, Gerard Clark wears number 15, 6'4", 330, came to Coastal Carolina as a tight end, which is absolutely unreal for a guy his size. If you look at the outside linebacker position, I think probably the guy that had the best pull might have been Darrell Johnson, a guy that just seemed to continually be in the backfield there from Liberty. Had 22 tackles for loss on the year, which led the country. Plays that bandit position. He's 6'3", 240 pounds, and really using that jab to the outside, beating the right tackle back to the inside. I think he really took advantage of a right tackle that couldn't really move very well laterally, and so he was really worried about that outside rush and was continually beating him back to the inside. But what you loved was his ability. He used his hands really well, some good power in those hands, and being able to bend a little bit. I think that's one of the things that people were worried about. Could he bend? You saw him dipping under the tackle, getting into the backfield, affecting run plays, in addition to getting after the quarterback. But Darrell Johnson for Liberty really put on a show, and really it seemed like every time Liberty was making a play in the backfield, you're going to be calling Darrell Johnson's number. Ultimately, Liberty goes down to Toledo 21-19 in the Boca Raton Bowl, but Darrell Johnson, 9 tackles, a sack, and 5 tackles for loss. Really stood out. He'll be a day 3 pick because of his ability to make plays behind the line of scrimmage. If you look at the inside linebacker position, Jack Campbell, another guy that didn't need to play in the draft because he was going to be a guy drafted in the first 2 days of the draft. But, again, showcased another double-digit tackle day. Dorian Williams against USC had 18 tackles, very active, a guy that could turn and run, that sideline-to-sideline speed, really showed up well for him. D. Winters from TCU, another guy that he seemed to play very well coming downhill. I thought there were times when he had to play sideline to sideline where he got himself into trouble a little bit. But coming downhill, the instincts, especially playing the run against Michigan, really stood out to me. Carlton Marshall, look, he's not the biggest guy by any means, but 14 tackles on the day. Look, that broke the FBS tackle record. He's the guy that's going to find his way onto an NFL roster. I mean, you can write that down now. I thought, Mariano Sori-Marin is a guy from Minnesota that's going to be a day 3 pick, be a special team standout for someone. Ryan Smenda, another double-digit tackle day for him. Aaron Beasley had 4 tackles for loss. A guy that really was in the backfield quite a bit there against Clemson. I like Kelly Ringo. Kelly Ringo is a guy who has tremendous size. 6'2", 190 pounds, really nice length to him as well. But the knock on him is he gets beaten a lot and called for defensive pass interference a lot. And so you saw a little bit of that against Ohio State, especially where he was beaten to the inside on a lot of the in-breaking routes by Emeka Egbuka and Marvin Harrison Jr. He would also get his eyes into the backfield, and the receiver would take off on him. There were plays where he ended up running into the receiver. Really just the eye discipline was lacking with him as well. That's something that you have to worry about with him. But at the same time, there were also plays where he was able to remain stride for stride with his receiver, be able to flip his hips and turn and run quickly, stride for stride up the sideline against Julian Fleming on a go route, was able to really force him toward the sideline, and played that well on a go route. But then there was a comeback later on in the game where Ringo gets his head around looking for the football to the inside, and the comeback back to the outside, and ends up getting burned on that play. Really just seemed to be getting turned around at times there with some of the route running. But for all of that, this is a guy that has the ball skills, is able to drive on the football. He just needs to play with more discipline, and that's really going to be the biggest thing, I think, at the end of the day with Keely Ringo. I think there's enough there for him to be drafted in round number 1, but that immaturity there with the way that he plays, he's going to have to kind of scale some of that back if he wants to be successful at the next level. Now Trevius Hodges Tomlinson, the nephew of TCU great LaDainian Tomlinson, not the biggest guy by any means. He's 5'9", 177 pounds. But this was a guy that did a really good job in coverage against Michigan. I think that's one of the things that definitely stood out. Very tight coverage against Cornelius Johnson. There was a comeback, able to make a play on the football. Covered Colston Loveland, the big tight end, who looks like he's going to have a pretty nice future there for the Wolverines. He was trail technique on a deep crossing route. Showed the speed to close, undercut the route, getting a hand in to tip the ball away. Just always seemed to be looking to undercut the route, make a play on the football. He plays bigger than his size. I think that's one of the things that definitely stands out for him. He needs to watch, being too physical at times. Uses his hands a little bit. One of the things, you watched him against A.D. Mitchell, on the outside, turns his hips, inside leverage, gets over the top of the route, physical at the top of the route, forces the receiver into the sideline. So for me, it's something that I think he does a really good job of continuing to work on that outside. You see that press, he stays square with the receiver, jab to the outside, plants and goes back inside. And that's one of the things that you see him continuing to close quickly, even if there is separation, drives inside the route, able to make a play on the football. I think Hodges Tomlinson's the guy, because of his lack of size, is likely going to fall to day 2 of this draft, probably maybe even to the 3rd round, but a guy that I think is going to showcase some pretty nice ball skills there at the next level. Emmanuel Forbes, another guy that didn't need to play in the bowl game, but did so anyway. He did get hurt in the game, which I thought was kind of a bummer. But look, he was physical with the receiver after he was, had the ball in his hand, so you didn't see any yak at all. Stayed square to his receiver off the ball, turns and runs with the receiver in phase, right off the hip. Read the receiver screen, drove downhill off the snap, ran by the tight end block on the perimeter. ultimately just forced the quarterback to throw it away. Playing Illinois in the ReliaQuest Bowl. Look, 6 foot, 180 pounds. Emmanuel Forbes, to me, is a guy that could be a first-round pick. I think will probably end up falling to the second round, but is a high-quality corner who could end up being a starter when it's all said and done as well. USC's Mekhi Blackmon, they're against Tulane. Obviously, SC fans weren't too happy with the outcome here, but for Mekhi Blackmon, look, 6 foot, 175 pounds, covering Deuce Watts in man coverage. He was in phase, beaten early, recovered well. As the receiver's eyes got big, head around late to the inside, able to locate the football, break up play as well. You saw him get off a block and able to wrap up the quarterback on the outside as well. Tajee Spears, tried to cut it to the inside of Blackmon on the perimeter, was able to get a hand in to punch the ball free as well. I think Blackman's a guy that is continuing to get better and better. Third, fourth round range is not out of the question for him. I think he's definitely a guy that's improved his draft stock for sure, showing some really good ball skills there for the Trojans. Other corners who caught my eye, how about Marshall's Stephen Gilmore, the younger brother of Stephon Gilmore, Darrell Luter, and Mike Sainer still the nickel there for Michigan. Those were guys that definitely caught my eye. And then if you look at the safety position, Brian Branch to me is a guy that, you don't see corner or safeties that are drafted in the top 10 very often, but the way Brian Branch was making plays, K-State in the Sugar Bowl, was no different. You saw the quick click and close ability, arriving at the football with such physicality, covering against the run play, keeping outside leverage, beats the block of the receiver Malik Knowles, able to get outside versus Deuce Vaughn, gets downhill to ultimately wrap the running back up for a loss of 3 yards, didn't allow the running back to get to the edge on the perimeter, shoots in off the edge, beats the block of the running back DJ Giddens to the inside, runs right by him and drops Deuce Vaughn in the open field for another loss of 3 yards. There's a play where Will Anderson beats the left tackle on a 3rd and 8 play from the K-State 14. He's able to jump the route inside of the receiver, Malik Knowles, for the pick. Really sitting back, playing over the slot. The receiver runs a dig. Again, sitting over the top of that route to the inside, reads the quarterback's eyes, and Knowles was outside the numbers. And from a step inside the hash, reads that throw, undercuts it, makes the pick. He's a blitzer, he's a tackler, he's instinctive in zone coverage, a guy that can make plays behind the line of scrimmage as well. To me, he's a total package. This game just furthered the argument that this is a guy that should be drafted in the top half of round number 1. Really a lot of fun to watch Brian Branch play. He wasn't the only guy that I was impressed with, though. A guy that I think has continued to improve his draft stock is Christopher Smith out of Georgia. People talk about Antonio Johnson all season long. Well, Christopher Smith has been about as consistent as it comes. A guy who is very intelligent, takes excellent angles to the football, reads the offense and understands the play that's as it's happening. And look, there's a jet sweep to the wide side, and he knew exactly where Darius Davis was going. Comes flying downhill from depth to get to the outside, and as Darius Davis was trying to turn the corner and get to the edge, Smith was able to rip the ball free, recovered by Georgia, which led to a field goal. Georgia goes up 10-0. Ultimately, we know what happens. Georgia wins 65-7. But Christopher Smith, a leader on the defensive side. He's not the biggest guy, 5'10", 185 pounds, but just an intelligent safety, just makes a ton of plays, and just really a lot of fun to watch. Jordan Battle, look, the list of Bama players that did not opt out of the bowl game, I thought it was really tremendous, and I think kudos to Nick Saban for getting these guys to do this. Jordan Battle, look, 6'1", 210 pounds, 3-year starter. This was a guy that Will Howard dropped back, took a hit from Byron Young as he threw it. Battle was able to get from the hash to the sideline, undercutting the running back Deuce Vaughn on a wheel route, elevated to the high point of that football for the interception. Jordan Battle to me is a guy that's going to be that 2nd or 3rd round range and be a safety with starting that starting potential early in his career. I think when you look at Jair Brown out of Penn State, this was another guy that I thought played very well in that Rose Bowl game against Utah, able to get downhill in a hurry, blitzing off the edge. There's another play where he read the quarterback leaking out on an end around by Devon Vele, took away that throwback to the receiver, to the quarterback, and ultimately Vele was thrown for a 9-yard loss. On the outside, showed the burst to get to the quarterback as he was releasing it. Blitzes through the A gap, uses an arm over to beat the running back Micah Bernard, get to Barnes for the sack as well. Very active safety. Another guy who's sub 6 foot at that safety position, 5'11", 205. Very active and a guy that makes a lot of plays on the football. And then there's Jamie Robinson, and a guy who just. Look, another senior, didn't need to play in the bowl game against Oklahoma, the Cheez-It Bowl, but wanted another game there at Florida State. 5'11", 203. It seemed like number 10 was all over the football field. He was downhill, blitzing the quarterback, able to break down, change directions. Dylan Gabriel tried to get from the outside to avoid him and get back to the inside. Robinson was able to stay under control, get to the quarterback for that sack. Saw him to rush from the box, initially blocked by the right guard, McCabe Matauer. Uses his arm over to get off the block, gets downhill to sack Dylan Gabriel as well. Very active box defender against the run. 86 tackles, led Florida State, and a guy that just he has a lot of range. He makes plays sideline to sideline. Plays multiple positions for the Seminoles as well. I think he's a guy that could end up very high character player, a guy that I think can end up leading a secondary at the next level in very short order. Came over from South Carolina and immediately really commanded some respect there on the back end of that defense. So there you have it, a very brief recap of the Bowls. There are a lot of other guys that were standouts, and we could really get into more detail with a lot of these players, but those were just a few guys that I thought really had standout performances that are draft eligible this year, and guys that I'm excited to continue to study throughout this draft process. The next podcast that we're going to have here in just a couple of days is to take a look at all of the underclassmen and what they do for the draft class. So we're going to take a look at it position by position. We'll talk through really where everybody stands. Obviously, you look at like the quarterback position, and you've got Jaron Hall is a guy that decided to enter his name into the draft class, but you've got Bo Nix and Michael Penix Jr. who decided not to. So what does that mean for Jaron Hall? It's probably a good decision, but we'll go ahead and take a look at that. Among others, you look at the running back position. There are a lot of underclassmen that have decided to declare this year. Receivers, tight ends, really across the board. And so there's a lot to talk about there, a lot to really unpack, and we'll make sure to do that in short order here coming up, like I said, in the next couple of days. So I hope everyone has enjoyed their time. NFL playoffs in full swing. Conference championships right around the corner. That means that the NFL draft order for the first round really starting to take shape. We'll be able to put together that mock draft here. Already have an idea in the first 2 rounds where I'm going with some of the picks. So I'll be able to bring that to you here in the coming weeks as well. So until next time, for ReadyForTheDraft.com, this has been the Ready for the Draft podcast. I've been your host, Gregg Schutze. Take care, everyone. Enjoy your week, and until next time, I am out.